Okay. Good morning, Namo Buddhaya to everyone and all the participants online. So we'll continue our discussion on how to prepare for our deaths, our transitions from this lifetime into new lifetime. So before we do that, let's just set a good motivation for our session today and just maybe recite the refuge prayer. So let's just calm our minds before we do that. Just make sure that you're comfortable in your posture. Keep your back erect, keep your shoulders straight, arms relaxed. The right palm resting in the left palm and the tip of the thumbs touching each other. Keep your eyes closed, your chin tucked in, and the tip of the tongue resting against the upper row of teeth, is behind the upper row of teeth. And just observe your mind, just pause all the chatter in your mind about your regular routine and your concerns. Just park them for the moment and resolve that you will focus on the subject of the discussion for today, which is how to prepare for transition from this life to the next one. So just collect your thoughts. Now maybe we'll do a little short breathing meditation to calm our minds. So just observe the sensations in the area between your upper lip and the tip of your nose. Just bring the focus of your mind to that space and observe the sensations that you experience there. Now bring the focus of your mind to your in-breath. Just observe the sensations that we experience as we breathe in. Just make a note of the nostril that you breathe in through and just observe the sensations you experience there. Also observe the movement of your chest and abdomen as you breathe in. Now bring the focus of your mind to your out breath. Observe which nostril you breathe out through and observe the sensations you experience there. Also observe the movement of your chest and abdomen as you breathe out. Now bring the focus of your mind back to the in-breath and count it as 1, out-breath as 2, just count till 11. Now just think about the fact that we've been circling in the samsara for an infinite time. We've taken countless rebirths in the samsara. And experienced a lot of suffering in the samsara. And yet we haven't found a way out of it. We still remain unliberated. But due to some positive merit that we have accumulated in the past, we have the good fortune of this human rebirth in this lifetime. And we've also met with the spiritual doctrine that the Buddha taught, and also have the fortune of being guided by the Sangha, who's still practicing actively the doctrine that the Buddha taught. So we have these fortunate conditions, favorable conditions. And from our discussions in the past, we know that there are 10 different endowments that characterize our present existence. So recollect those 8 freedoms and the 10 endowments that characterize our existence as humans. And also remember that these 8 freedoms and 10 endowments do not abide forever, for eternity. So those could be taken away from you. We could be separated from these 8 freedoms and 10 endowments when you die. So there's no guarantee that in the next lifetime you would have the same form, similar form, human form. So it's more likely that we could be born in one of the lower, the unfortunate realms, the hell realms, or the realm of hungry ghosts, or the animal realms. And then we'll have to experience a lot of suffering that characterizes those realms. So ask yourself if you're willing to experience that kind of suffering, even for a second. So even if we are fortunate and we have a higher rebirth as a human or a deva, we know from uh, our studies and our experience that human rebirth is also characterized by a lot of suffering. So we have the suffering of birth, we have the suffering of aging, illness, and death. And even the devas experience a lot of suffering, not during the course of their lives, but towards the end of their lives. So a higher rebirth is not a guarantee that we will not experience any suffering. And here we are, we have this human rebirth. We have connected with the Dharma, and we have the intelligence, discriminating awareness that helps us understand the shortcomings of the samsara and the virtues of liberation. So we should all strive to attain that state of liberation. Use the favorable conditions that we have in this lifetime to strive for attaining the state of liberation. But individual liberation is not a sufficient goal. There would still be countless number of sentient beings left behind in the samsara. Mother sentient beings who have been close to us, who have been dear to us in the past, they would still be left behind. So we should all strive to attain a state which would enable us to not just ensure our own liberation, but their liberation. And the state of complete enlightenment, complete Buddhahood, the state that can enable us to uh, not just ensure our own liberation, but the liberation of all sentient beings. So we should all strive to attain that state of complete enlightenment. And who are our best guides and mentors and refuge on this in this pursuit of that state of complete enlightenment is the three jewels of refuge. So the Buddha who taught the path towards enlightenment, the Sangha who can assist us on this path, and the real refuge, the Dharma, the realizations in the mind streams of the enlightened beings and the scriptures. So it's all go to refuge to these sources of refuge, these three jewels. So I go to refuge to these three jewels of refuge till I'm enlightened by my practice of giving and other perfections. May I attain the state of a completely enlightened Buddha for the sake of all sentient beings. So just generate your mind in that aspect, which pursues complete enlightenment as a goal. And the purpose is so that you can serve all sentient beings. So I'll just recite the sutra, remembering the three jewels. Namaste Buddha Bodhisattvebhya iti Buddha Bhavanstada Samyasa Buddha Vidyacharan Sampanna Subuddha Loka Vidanuttara Purushadamya Sarati Shasta Deva Manusha Nama Buddha Bhavaniti Nishans Tadagat Punya Nama Vipranash Kushala Mula Nama Venkrishanthana Punya Nidhanana Chitito Vanjane Kusumita Lakshane Pratibupo Gocharena Pratipala Darshanena Avirati Shaddadi Mukta Nama Vibhuta Pradnyan Vamardani Badeya Shasta Sarvasatva Nama Pidamo Disatva Nama Raja Putgalana Sattva Nirvana Nagar Samprastitana Aprameyanena Achinta Pratibhanena Vishuddha Swarena Swadini Goshina Sachikundarupena अप्रतिस्मकायेन लिप्तकामेन लिप्तरूपेय असंशिष्टारूपेय विक्रमत्तस्कन्धेय सम्पृक्तधातुमेय संवृत्तायतनेय प्रच्छिन्नग्रन्थेय विमुक्तपरिधाने परिमुक्तसृष्ण्यावगादुत्तीर्ण परिपूर्णज्ञानेन प्रतिष्ठितवती तानागता प्रतिपन्नानाम बुद्धानाम भगवतां ज्ञाने अप्रतिष्ठितो निर्वाणे स्थितभूतकोटयां स्थितसर्वसत्त्वलोकनीयायां भूमौ सर्वैः तथागतानां विशिष्टसमयगुणाः सधर्मस्तु आदौ कल्याण मध्य कल्याण परिवसान कल्याण स्वस्थ्योंजन केवल परिपूर्ण परिशुद्ध परिवदात स्वाख्यात भगवत धर्म सादृष्टि कनेश्वर कालिक नायक पेशक प्रत्यात्म वेद्य विज्ञेय स्वाख्यात भगवत धर्म विनेय सुप्रविदित नैर्यानिक संबोधिगामी भिन्न संस्तुप सप्रतिशन्न चिन्ह प्रोतिको संघानुस्मृति सुप्रतिपन्न भगवदार्य संघ प्रतिपन्न रुचि प्रतिपन्न सामिच प्रतिपन्न अंजलि करणीय सामिच करणीय पुण्यश्री क्षेत्र महादक्षिणा परिशोधक प्राव्य आवनीय आर्य त्रिरत्नानुसति सूत्रम समाप्तम. Also recite the Heart Sutra. So you have it to 876. 876. नमः सर्वज्ञाय एवं मैं श्रुतम एकस्मिन् समय भगवान राजगृह विहरति स्म रुद्रकूटे पर्वते महतावेक्ष संगेन साधर्म महता च बोधिसत्व संगेन तेन खलु समेन भगवान गंभीरावसंबोधं नाम समाधिं समापन्ना तेन च समेन आर्यवृत्तेषु बोधिसत्व महासत्त्वा गंभीरायां प्रज्ञापान्वितायां चर्याम चर्मान एवं व्योलोकिति स्म पंचस्कन्धांस्तांच स्वभावशून्यं व्योलोकिति अतायुष्मान शौरिपुत्र बुद्धानुभावेन आर्यावृत्तेश्वरं बोधिसतमेतदोचत एकश्चिङ्कुलपुत्र गम्भीरायां प्रज्ञापारमितायां चर्यां च कामगतं शिक्षितव्य एव मुक्ते आर्यावृत्तेश्वर बोधिसत्वमासत्व आयुष्यबन्धं शारिपुत्रमेतदोचत एकश्चिन् शारिपुत्र कुलपुत्र वपुर्नीतावस्याम गम्भीरायां प्रज्ञापारमितायां चर्यां च कामः तेनेव विवलोकितव्यं पञ्चस्कन्धास्तान् च स्वभावशून्यान् समनुपश्यति स्म रूपं शून्यता शून्यतैव रूपं रूपान् पृथक् शून्यता शून्यता न पृथक् रूपं यद् रूपं सा शून्यता या शून्यता तद् रूपमेव वेदना संज्ञा संस्कार विज्ञानानि च शून्यता एवं शारिपुत्र सर्वधर्मा शून्यता लक्षणानि उत्पन्नानि रुद्धां लविम्लानुना सम्पूर्णाः तस्मात् तर्हि शारिपुत्र शून्यतां न रूपं न वेदना न संज्ञा न संस्कार न विज्ञानं न चक्षुः न श्रोत्रं न घ्राणं न जीवा न कायो न मनो न रूपं न शब्दो न गन्धो न रसो न स्पृष्टव्यं न धर्मं न चक्षुर्धातुर्या वर्णं न धातुर्न धर्मधातुर्न मनोविज्ञान धातु न विज्ञान विज्ञानक्षय न जरामरण न जरामरणक्षय न दुःखसमुदय निरोध मार्ग न ज्ञानं न प्राप्तिर्न प्राप्तिर् तस्मात् तर्हि शारिपुत्र प्राप्तित्वेन बोधिसत्त्वानां प्रज्ञापारमिताश्रित्य विहरति चित्तावर्ण चित्तावरणास्तित्वाद् द्रष्टो विपर्यासतिक्रान्तो निष्ठनिर्वाणः त्रयद्वयस्थितः सर्वबुद्ध प्रज्ञापारमिताश्रित्य अनुत्तरां समय सम्बोधिमपि सम्बुद्धा तस्माद् ज्ञातव्य प्रज्ञापारमिता महामंत्र अनुत्तर मंत्र सम सम मंत्र सर्वदुख प्रशमन मंत्र सत्यम नित्यद्वाद प्रज्ञापारमिता मुक्त मंत्र तत्तागते गते पारसंगते बोधि स्वाहा एवं शारिपुत्र गंभीरायां प्रज्ञापारमितायां चर्यायां शिक्षितव्यं बोधिसत्त्वेन अथ खलु भगवान् तस्मात् समाधेर्विधाय आर्यवृत्तेश्वरस्य बोधिसत्त्वस्य साधु धर्मदात साधु साधु कुलपुत्र एवमेतद् कुलपुत्र एवमेतद् गंभीरायां प्रज्ञापारमितायां चर्यां च तव्यं यथा त्वया निर्दिष्टमनुमोदते तदागतिर्हद्भिः इदं वोचगत् भगवान् आनन्दमनायुष्यमान् शारिपुत्र आर्यवृत्तेश्वरश्च बोधिसत्त्वसा च सर्वावति परिषत् सदैव मनुष्यसुरगन्धर्वश्च लोको भगवतो भाषितम् अभिनन्दन इति प्रज्ञापारमिता हृदयसूत्रं समाप्तम्. All right, so with recitation of the sutras and the prayer that we recited, we set good motivation for the session. So, as you're all aware, we've had 3 sessions on how to prepare for this eventuality that characterizes our existence, which is that the present life, which is sustained by life force, towards the end, that life force kind of is taken away, and this life comes to an end, and we transition into a new life. So, the first couple of sessions that you had with Venerable Namjon, you would have studied what typically is the attitude towards this transition, and how we can meditate, specifically the meditation on the 9 points of death and impermanence, to modify this attitude that we have towards death or this transition. So we've seen that we have this real fear or anxiety about this eventuality, uh, about transitioning from one life to the other, because we don't really know what's there on the other side. So it's almost like a black hole. The death is the event horizon, and we don't really know what happens on the other side. But then through proper study and proper meditations, I know we can acquaint ourselves with uh, how this process works, and how we actually can prepare ourselves to deal with that process. And with that kind of study and that kind of familiarization, we can get enough confidence to deal with it properly. So the first couple of sessions were about how to change our attitude towards death and dying. And as we had seen yesterday also, the Buddha had said in the Mahaparinirvana Sutra that there's this verse from the Mahaparinirvana Sutra. It says that among all harvests, the autumn harvest is supreme, and among all tracks, as in footprints, the track of the elephant is the supreme. And among all ideas, among all thought concepts, the uh, cultivation of the idea of impermanence and death is supreme, because it helps us eliminate ignorance, it helps us eliminate attachment, it helps us deal with a lot of our afflictions. So that's the verse from the Mahaparinirvana Sutra. And then we had also seen a similar kind of advice from the Buddha on why it is important to cultivate mindfulness of death and impermanence. So there's this sutra in the Pali tradition. It's called the Marana Sati Sutta. Uh, as we've seen yesterday, Maran means death, and Sati is Smriti or mindfulness. So mindfulness of death sutra. And in that sutra, the sutra is actually in two parts, and it's addressed to the monks mostly. It's an assembly of monks at a place called Nadika. And the Buddha addresses the monks, and he says, Bhagwa etadochada marana sati bhikkave bhavita bahulikata mahaphala oti mahani samsa amrita gada amrita pariyosana bhave tato tume bhikkave marana sati tanti. So the Bhagwan is saying that mindfulness of death, when developed and pursued, is of great fruit and great benefits. It helps us gain a footing in the state of the deathless. And therefore, we should develop the mindfulness of death. So this is the advice that he given to the monks. And as I said, the sutra is actually in two parts. So the first part actually, at the start, this is what the Buddha says, and then he asked the bhikshus about whether they engage in mindfulness of death, whether they cultivate mindfulness of death, and then the monks. And there's this monk who says that yes, indeed, I have cultivated the mindfulness of death. And the Buddha asked him, how exactly have you cultivated the mindfulness of death? And the monk says that I think like this, maybe I live for a day and a night. And if that's the duration that's the interval or the time duration that I would stay, may I use that time to engage with the Buddha's instructions, with the Bhagwan's instructions. And then there's another big bhikshu who gets up and he says that even I have cultivated the mindfulness of death. And he says that I think like this, if only I had to live for just a day, then I'll use that interval, that time to reflect on the instructions of the Buddha. And so on. There are like uh, several monks who get up and then they kind of voice this cultivation of voice, how they've cultivated this mindfulness of death. So the durations that each monk talks about gets shorter and shorter till there's one monk who gets up and he says that, oh, if only I had to live for the time interval between my swallowing a morsel of food, my chewing a morsel of food and then swallowing. May I use that time to reflect on the Buddha's instructions? And then another monk then gets up. May I use, if I were to leave only for the time interval between my breathing in and breathing out, then may I use that time interval to reflect on the Buddha's instructions? So then the Buddha says, yeah, that's how actually you cultivate the mindfulness of death. So if you uh, when you reflect and you feel that if you were to have only this much time left for you in this lifetime, the interval that it takes to breathe in and breathe out, then may I use that time interval to reflect on the Buddha's teachings, on the Buddha's instructions. And those monks, those bhikshus who engage in this kind of endeavor, this kind of practice, put in this kind of effort, are the ones who are most heedful and are the ones who are cultivating the mindfulness of death. And then there's also the second part of the sutra. In that sutra, the Buddha again begins with how greatly beneficial this cultivation of mindfulness of death is. And then a monk gets up and he says that, they, when the day departs and the night returns, and I reflect that maybe I die of a snake bite, maybe I die of a scorpion bite, or maybe a centipede bites me, or maybe I trip over something and fall, and that becomes the cause of my death, or maybe I die from severe indigestion from the food that I have taken in. So there could be several causes for my death, and I may not be able to see the morning. So if that is the case, then I reflect if there's any kind of unskillful or any kind of evil mental attitude that's left unabandoned in my mental stream. And if that is the case, that unabandoned attribute, mental attribute, would become an obstruction for me to advance in my spiritual practice. So if I were to die in the middle of the night and I have left that unskillful mental attribute unabandoned, then that would become an obstruction for my development in the future. So I should put more effort. I should be more diligent. I should put in more endeavor and my undivided attention to abandonment of this mental attribute. So the Buddha kind of congratulates the monk on this kind of thought, and he says that that's exactly how one should engage in cultivation of this mindfulness of death, and this mindfulness of death brings great benefit to us. So that is about how we, change our mental attitude, our mental disposition towards death and dying. And in the first two sessions, we've seen that how we do that is we reflect on the inevitability of death, the uncertainty of the time of death, and the fact that at the time of death, nothing but your dharma, your spiritual training, that will help. No amount of wealth, no amount of friends, not even your body that you've invested so much in cultivating, nothing of that will help you at the time of death. So we reflect on those, and then we try and change our orientation, mental orientation to death. And then in the last session, we had seen that once we cultivated, we kind of changed our orientation towards death. Then how exactly can we prepare for that? And we've seen how we can prepare through the course of our lives, and then how we can prepare when death is proximate, when we are close to death. And then we are also going to see how we can navigate this process of death. So there's a very elaborate, detailed presentation of the actual process, the last stage of transitioning. So we'll look at that process in today's session. Uh, and then we are also supposed to uh, look at how we can help other people who are dying, uh, and what exactly we would need to prepare ourselves to assist others who are faced with this eventuality of dying. So last session we had uh, seen how the instructions on how to prepare for death. I mean, there is a set of general instructions, and then there was specific advice on how to cultivate um, the five powers that you can um, deploy to prepare for death during your lifetime, and how those five powers can be used even at the time of death. And then we've seen extensively how to cultivate the meditation of giving and taking. So we'll continue with that. Yesterday we had seen how to do the meditation of giving and taking, of giving and taking from for the individual, taking on his individual suffering, and giving love, and yeah, giving loving kindness to your own self from the future. So we'll build on that meditation today, and we'll see how we can do that meditation of giving and taking for others. So just like yesterday, we'll just revise the context of this practice. So we've seen that this practice actually uh, flows from the practice of equalization of self and others, that is described in the text on the Bodhisattva's deeds, Bodhicharya Avatara by Shantideva. And in order to prepare ourselves for this meditation, there are a couple of steps that we need to do before we do this meditation on giving and taking. So the background, the context for this practice is that uh, you need to before you take on the suffering of others and give happiness of your own self to others, you need to develop your practice of equalization of self and others, and then use that to modulate your cherishing attitude and change the perspective of the cherishing attitude from self cherishing, which is what it is right now, to other cherishing. So the first step of how to equalize oneself and others, we've seen these verses from the Bodhicharya avatars. We'll just revise that again. So there are these three verses which talk about um, how one needs to, why one needs to equalize self and others, why, or what makes self and others equal, and then what are the drawbacks of an self-cherishing attitude, and what are the advantages of other cherishing attitude, and how without engaging in this practice of taking on others' suffering and giving one's own happiness to others, you cannot really advance to even meet your worldly goals, just let alone meeting the goal of attaining the state of complete enlightenment. So we'll just revise those verses. So these verses are from chapter 8 from Bodhicharya Avatara. So verse number 90 says that, first of all, I should make an effort to meditate upon the equality between self and others. I should protect all beings as I do myself, because we are all equal in wanting pleasure and not wanting pain. So uh, it says, Paratma Samata Madho Bhavayetam Bhavayed Eva Evam Adarat Samadukha Sukha Sarve Palaniya Mayatvamat. So sama dukkha sukha. So everybody is kind of equal in not wanting dukkha, and everybody is equal in wanting to be united with happiness and pleasure. And just like we act, we protect ourselves against suffering and its causes. We should protect others also from suffering and its causes. So sama dukkha sukha sarve palaniya mayatmam avat. So that's the first verse, and it talks about this equality between self and others. And we've seen how we can examine that equality. And that equality actually we can understand that on three levels. The first one is to understand that there's equality in purpose. Others conduct their lives so that they can be happy and free from suffering. And similarly, we conduct our lives so that we can be happy and free from suffering. So, in that sense, in terms of purpose, we are equal. Even in terms of entity, we are equal. In terms of the affinity that we have, we are equal. So, we've seen what logic we can use to understand these three levels of equality. And then using that understanding of equality, then we saw how we can use that understanding to change our cherishing attitude from being self-cherishing at the moment to becoming other-cherishing. So in this verse from Bodhicharya Avatara, again, verse number 113, Shanti Deva talks about the drawbacks of self-cherishing and talks about the benefits, the advantages of other cherishing. So he says, having seen the mistakes in cherishing myself and the ocean of good in cherishing others, I shall completely reject all selfishness and accustom myself to accepting others. So, Nyatva sadosham atmanam paranapi guno dadhin atma bhava parityagam paradanam cha bhavayeta. So, atma parityagam, so you abandon this atma bhav, which is self-cherishing, and paradhanam, so you adopt the attitude of other cherishing, and that's how as accustom, you give up your attitude of selfishness and you accustom yourself to accepting others. And then he talks about the necessity of cultivating this other cherishing attitude. He says that if I do not actually exchange my happiness for the suffering of others, I shall not attain the state of Buddhahood, and even in cyclic existence, shall have no joy. So, whether it's attaining the ultimate goal of the state of a completely enlightened Buddha, or even experience of happiness in cyclic existence, joy in cyclic existence, that cannot be achieved or attained without engaging in this practice of exchanging self and others and replacing your cherishing attitude from self-cherishing to other cherishing. It says, na nanam sadhyam buddhatvam sansara eapi kuta sukham स्वसुखस्य अन्य दुखेन परिवर्तम पूर्वतः. So swasukhasya anya dukhena. So your own happiness and the suffering of others, anya dukhena. Parivartam. So you exchange that. So swasukhasya anya dukhena parivartam. So so you use this, and then once you've kind of gone through the reasons to you know, and convinced yourself that this is actually the attitude that we need to cultivate uh, to attain our ultimate goal of Buddhahood, then a practical way to actualize these instructions is to do this meditation on giving and taking. And we've seen that the meditation on giving and taking has two parts to it. There's meditation on giving, and there's meditation on taking. So the meditation on giving is you give love and joy to others, and that helps you enhance your practice of loving kindness. And the meditation of taking is to take on the uh, suffering of others, and that helps you build your practice of compassion. So the instructions for this meditation we've seen yesterday, the reference was, of course, your own self. So today we'll extend that, and we'll do this meditation for others with another addition. So when you do this meditation, so when you're giving, so you give while you exhale, and you give love to others while you exhale, and you take on the suffering of others suffering and its causes while you inhale. So you combine this meditation with inhalation and exhalation. So we'll do that. Just before that, we'll just revise the instructions, since most of you are familiar with the instructions. You can do the meditation without any kind of guidance later, but we'll just revise it briefly. There's a few newcomers here. So, as I said, the meditation for taking is to build our practice of compassion, and the purpose for the meditation of giving is to build a practice of love. So, the first part, meditation on taking. So you're taking on the suffering of others now. So yesterday we had seen that it's difficult for us to straight away kind of start taking on the suffering of others. We might feel that I can't even handle my own suffering, and it's difficult to even imagine taking on the suffering of others. So, in order to kind of ease ourselves into this meditation, we've done the meditation for our own selves. So, ourselves from the future. So, we think about ourselves from tomorrow, the week after, the month after, the year after, uh, and the life after, and the lives after that. And we think about all these future selves as different entities, and we take on the suffering of our future selves. We take on their transgressions, we take on their delusions, we take on the obscurations that could impede their spiritual progress in the future. So we take on all these obscurations and transgressions and suffering in the form of black rays or black smoke. And there's this self-cherishing attitude that we have at the center of our heart, at the heart chakra. And the black rays kind of collide with this black object at the center of our heart, at the heart chakra, and it completely destroys that. And all our obscurations, the self-cherishing attitude is completely destroyed, and it is replaced with an other cherishing attitude. And you do this while you're breathing in. So it will combine this with our inhalation. So instead of visualizing yourselves from the future, now we do it for others. So again, when you're doing it for others, you can start off by thinking about our family members first, your brothers and sisters, your parents, uh, and then do it for people who are friendly to you. And then you can do it for people who are neutral, strangers, and maybe then later on continue that meditation for people who've been hostile to you, who you're not very friendly. So, so think about them. So you take your family members first, and think about their suffering, think about their obscurations, think about their transgressions, think about their delusions, their afflictions, and you know think about uh, visualize all these negativities in the form of black smoke, black rays. They radiate towards you, towards your heart center, heart chakra, and collide with the self-cherishing attitude that you have in the form of black object at the center of your heart. And that collision then destroys your self-cherishing attitude and replaces it with other cherishing attitude. So think about this, and then when you do that, when you finish this, then we can think about taking on the suffering of sentient beings from the other realms. So sentient beings from the hell realms, sentient beings from the hungry ghost realms, and the sentient beings from the animal realm. And then think about taking on the suffering of demigods and the suffering of the gods, and think about taking on the suffering uh, uh, of humans, and take on the suffering, the obstacles and the obscurations that are impeding the progress of the practice of your gurus also, and bodhisattvas also. So when you're doing the visualization, when you're doing the uh, you know, taking, you progress in this manner. And then you do the meditation giving. So what do you give? You're giving your merits from the past, the merits of this present lifetime, as well as the merits from the future. And you're also giving your body, your present body, and your body from the future. You're giving whatever material resources that you have access to. You give those also from the past, from the present, and the future. You give those to other sentient beings. And when you're giving these, what you do is you visualize these being transformed into things that are desired by the other sentient beings. So, for example, when you're offering it to the hell beings in the hot hells need some relief from the heat. So you visualize that the material resources that you're giving to them, they get transformed into some sort of a soothing rain that brings some immediate comfort to them. And then you can also visualize that these material resources that you have get transformed into good locations and good shelters and clothing for these beings in the hell realms. And more importantly, once you've addressed these more kind of worldly demands and desires and needs of the beings in the hell realm, you think about your bodies and the material resources that you have and your merit transforming into optimum human rebirths. So they then don't have to spend that much time in the hell realm, and they're born in as humans, and we have a human form which is endowed with the 10 endowments and the 8 freedoms. And they get to kind of have all these favorable conditions. And also visualize that these material resources from your present and the future are transformed into a spiritual guru that could assist these beings, assist them on the spiritual path and help them advance spiritually. So you do that for the hot hell beings, and then for the cold hell beings, you visualize that the material resources that are access that you have access to, they get transformed into things that they desire. And the thing that they would desire the most is some sort of warmth. So you visualize that your material, your body and the merit and the uh, the form, the bodies that you take from in the future, and the material resources that you have, all these get transformed into warm sunlight and clothes for the beings in the cold hells, uh, so that they can be temporarily relieved from the discomfort of cold. And also then proceed to visualize that uh, the body is transformed into optimum human rebirth. They transform into a spiritual guru that can assist them, and then proceed to do that for beings in the hungry ghost realm. So what they desire the most is food and drink. So your body and the material resources that you have, that gets transformed into food and drink for them. uh, and then similarly for animals, the bodies and the material resources, they get transformed into discriminating intelligence for them, so that they can discriminate between the suffering nature of samsara and the virtues of liberation. Um, and then proceed on to do that for even the high ground bodhisattvas all the way up to the 10th ground and your gurus. Visualize that the bodies that you have from the present and the future, and the material resources that you have, they get transformed into uh, resources that can aid these beings, because they're highly realized and close to enlightenment. You can visualize that your material resources get transformed into things that can assist them in their bodhisattva activities, and also enhance their lifespan so that they can continue to guide other sentient beings for a long time. So let's do this meditation. So I think you have all the necessary instructions. Um, we'll do this for maybe 10 minutes and then take a break. Um, so make yourself comfortable. Again, back straight, shoulders erect, shoulders straight, um, arms relaxed. Close your eyes. It's better. Cut out the distraction. Uh, and then think about, recollect all the instructions that we've seen from the Bodhicharya Avatar about the virtues of equalizing self and others, the virtue of cultivating the other cherishing attitude, and the drawback of persisting with a self-cherishing attitude, and realize that the focus of this meditation is that we change our perspective of this cherishing attitude from currently it cherishes our welfare and neglects the welfare of others. So we shift the perspective so that it now cherishes the welfare of others and maybe neglects our own welfare. And the way to do that would be to do this meditation on giving and taking. So first part we'll do the meditation on taking, and we take on the suffering of others so that we can enhance our practice of compassion. So, uh, so maybe to start with, you can think about your parents and take on their suffering. Their suffering radiates towards you in the form of black smoke, and the self-cherishing attitude at the heart chakra, at your heart chakra, uh, is it collides with these black rays and it's completely destroyed. And you do that while you're inhaling. So as you inhale, just visualize that you're inhaling this black smoke, and it then travels to the heart chakra, collides with this black body representing, symbolizing the cherishing attitude, self-cherishing attitude at your heart chakra, and completely destroys it. So just do that for a moment. Now maybe you can do that for um, your friends. So as you inhale, think about taking on the suffering of your friend, and uh, that suffering is in the nature of black smoke. It as you inhale it, it passes to the heart chakra, where it collides with the cherishing attitude, your self-cherishing attitude, and destroys it completely. So now do it for a stranger. Maybe you can do it for a person who has been hostile to you. Now think about giving your merits your body from the present and the future, and all your material resources from the present and the future to others. So think that all these things that you're giving transform into favorable conditions for spiritual practice, and transform into forces that uh, will clear away all the obstacles and obscurations. So these energies then radiate out from your heart chakra, travel through your nostril as you exhale, and merges with the person that it is directed towards. So you can start with your parent first, then your friends, strangers, and or people who have been hostile to you. So do this as you exhale. So maybe now we can combine the two and think about sentient beings in the hot hells. And as you inhale, you visualize that you're taking on the suffering, the transgressions, and the obscurations of the hell beings, or the hell beings in the hot hells, in the form of black smoke, travels through your nostril and collides with the saturation attitude at the heart center, heart chakra, and it gets purified, and then you think about giving your merit, your material resources, your bodies from the present and the future. These get transformed into things that are desired and favorable for spiritual practice for these beings in the hell realms. So your material resources and bodies get transformed into uh, soothing rains, um, good shelter, clothes, and then optimum human rebirth and a spiritual guide. So as you exhale, these are the things that you would radiate outwards, and these will unite with the person it is directed to. So do that for uh, beings in the hot hells first. So inhale their suffering, and as you exhale, you provide all these things. Now for the beings in the cold hells who desire warmth. Now for the hungry ghosts, beings in the hungry ghost realm who desire food and drink. And for the animals who benefit from discriminating awareness and intelligence. and even realized beings, even the high ground bodhisattvas, who could benefit from uh, resources so that their bodhisattva activities can continue and their lifespans can increase. So this meditation of taking and giving is recommended as a practice that you need to familiarize with, habituate yourself so that at the time of dying, you can practice this meditation of Tonglen. The idea is that we do experience a lot of suffering during that process of dying. So if the cherishing, the self-cherishing attitude is very prominent and dominant, that suffering gets kind of amplified. Uh, Instead, if it is replaced with another cherishing attitude, and you realize that we are not the only ones suffering, there are a lot of other sentient beings in this world who are suffering, and we take on their suffering, uh, then the influence of this cherishing attitude kind of is negated, and we experience a lot of peace. And it also helps us accumulate a lot of positive merit um, by engaging in this practice. So that's the reason this is a recommended practice. So you can build on this practice. So we'll pause here, take a break, short break, and then 10 minutes we'll reassemble. Okay. Dipti, you want to pause this? So the teaching material that is circulated for these sessions, it requires us to cover a couple more topics. There's a lot of material that we're supposed to cover. It's not that much time. So the next topic that we're supposed to address is, as I said, the whole program over 4 sessions was first to try and see how we can change our attitude towards this process of dying, and then how we can prepare through our lifetime and at the time of when death is proximate. So there's another training that we're supposed to kind of familiarize ourselves with, how to navigate this process of dying. And uh, most of you are probably aware of this presentation in the Tibetan tradition, uh, the various stages that one goes through at the final stage when death is imminent. Uh, there are there's a sequence in which your body kind of proceeds through different stages, and we need, if you're familiar with that process, with those stages, and not just familiar, you train yourself enough, then you can actually use that process to advance your practice of you can meditate on subtle phenomena like emptiness and advance your spiritual practice, so that itself can become uh, a path for you to advance your spiritual practice. So this presentation actually comes from the uh, Vajrayana tradition. So the Vajrayana tradition, you might be aware, it talks about us having a very subtle kind of physiology. So this body has this very intricate complex of channels and energy centers and energies that flow through these channels. Uh, and when we uh, our bodies are supposed to be comprised or made up of some basic elements. And when we are born, there's a specific sequence in which those energies manifest, those elements manifest. And at the time of dying, also there's a specific sequence in which these energies dissolve. So there are 8 different stages of dissolution that we go through at the time of death. So the uh, will acquaint ourselves with what these 8 different stages are. The idea being that the more we familiarize ourselves with this process, uh, when it actually is the time for us to transition, uh, because we are familiar with this process, you can actually identify what stage you are at, and if you're trained well enough, then you can use that process to advance your meditation practice. And a lot of practitioners in our monastery, recently there was one very senior monk, elderly monk, who passed away. And he stayed in what is called this clear light meditation for a period of about 12 days. Um, uh, so what happens is that this person has trained himself, familiarized himself with this process, and through this training, he was able to identify when the clear light mind, which is the most subtle mind that abides in our mind stream, that manifests, and use that subtle mind, the subtlest mind, to meditate on emptiness. And he stayed in that meditation for a period of 12 days. Uh, so this entire process or dissolution of energies, uh, and there are external signs that can be seen by other people, uh, and there are internal signs that are visible only to the person who is dying. So okay, so what are these 8 stages? So uh, our bodies are comprised of 4 elements. So there's the earth element, there's the water element, the fire element, and the wind element. Um, so in any kind of physical part, physical organ that our body is comprised of, actually has some aspect of these 4 elements. But one of these could be more dominant than the other. So the earth element gives us solidity. The water element provides the principle of cohesion between different elements. The fire element brings the energy, and the wind element is responsible for the vibrations and the expansions that these elements could be experiencing. So when we When that is about to happen, if the uh, dissolution process is initiated, and then the earth element kind of dissolves and dissolves into the water element. The water element then dissolves into the fire element. The fire element dissolves into the wind element. The wind element dissolves into the consciousness or the space element. Consciousness then dissolves into what is called the mind of appearance. Then it is followed by the mind of increase and the mind of near attainment, and then finally the mind of clear light. So these are the 8 different stages. So the first stage is where the earth element dissolves into the water element. So what exactly does this mean? Dissolution. What it means is that the preceding element, the influence of the preceding element kind of weakens, and the influence of the subsequent element kind of becomes more dominant. So when the earth element dissolves into the water element is becoming more dominant. Uh, so because of this, the person who is dying, he experiences a lot of weakness. He feels like he's not able to support his body. And he has this experience that the body is actually sinking. So he has this feeling of sinking into his bed. Uh, so that's the experience that he has. And with each of these stages of dissolution, there's also uh, shutting down of our sense consciousnesses. So at the first stage of dissolution, the dissolution of the earth element, your visual sense kind of shuts down. So it's difficult for the person to see things when that dissolution has happened. Um, and these are kind of the external signs that the person, apart from the person who's dying, can actually notice. So the body also becomes kind of weak. The body shrinks. It becomes pale. The cheekbones become more prominent. So these are some of the external signs that are visible. And of course, the eye consciousness dissolves. The sense that dissolves at the stage is the visual sense. And the person is not able to see things clearly anymore. He finds it difficult to open his eyes, difficult to close his eyes. So these are the external signs. What is the inner sign? So the inner sign experienced by the person who is dying is he has this vision of a mirage. You know what a mirage is like. You often see it in very dry areas when there's intense heat. The sun rays kind of bounce off the sand particles, and you have this shimmering kind of appearance, silvery blue shimmering appearance. So that's the kind of appearance that the person who is dying would have internally. And that's not, of course, visible to people outside. So that is the first stage, and this is then followed by the dissolution of the water element. So the water element then dissolves into what the fire element. So the fire element is becoming more prominent. So the person who is dying, he experiences a lot of dryness in his body. His eyes, his mouth, nose, and throat, they become very dry. And he finds it very difficult to move his tongue. And the sense consciousness that dissolves at this point is the sense of hearing. So the person finds it difficult to hear. You can't hear sounds that clearly. And uh, as this dissolution process kind of proceeds, you find that the person also becomes progressively more confused, and his senses are hazy. He feels a little more frustrated and agitated. Uh, so this is the external sign at the stage, and the internal sign, the inner vision that he has is that of smoke. So it's like when you burn incense in a room, you have this cloud of smoke hanging around in your room. So the person who is dying has that a similar kind of vision internally. So that is the second stage. The third stage is when the water element dissolves into the fire element. So that is the second stage, right? So third stage is when the fire element dissolves. the fire element dissolves into the wind element. At this stage, the person he starts losing warmth from his body. So the warmth from his body kind of starts reducing, and gradually the only part of his body that is warm is the area around the heart chakra at the center of your body. So the warmth kind of starts withdrawing, and the only place that you can feel some warmth is at the heart chakra. And because fire element is responsible to it aids the process of digestion of food and all that, the person is no longer able to digest any food, and although he might want to eat food, he has that craving, he's not able to eat or drink at this stage. And his eyes and throat and tongue, everything, mouth, everything is very dry, very completely dry. uh, Again, at this stage, he becomes progressively a little more confused than the previous stage. And at this stage, the sense consciousness that dissolves is the sense of smell. Uh, and also, one another external sign that would be visible is the breathing that the person is. He finds that breathing is a little more labored than in the previous two stages. So the in breath is shorter and the out breath is stronger and longer. So that's the external sign that you would notice in this person. The person is dying. And the inner vision that the person has is a vision of fireflies at night, or sparks, like if you light a bonfire at night and there's gush of wind, and the sparks all over this place. So you have that kind of vision at this stage. So that is the third stage, the dissolution of the fire element. And the fourth stage is the dissolution of the wind element. It dissolves into the space of the consciousness element. So at this stage, the wind element has dissolved, and the person, uh, because the wind element is responsible for the mobility of elements, the physical elements, the person becomes immobile at this stage. He's not able to move his body, and he's also a lot more confused than he was previously. And the sense consciousnesses that dissolve at this stage are the two senses of taste and touch. So taste and touch, they dissolve at this stage. And the inner vision that the person has at the stage is a vision of dim light. So he sees like I mean, you can visualize a candle with a flickering flame, or a butter lamp, sputtering butter lamp. So dim light emerging from that, and the flame is very unsteady and about to die, almost about to kind of go out. So that's the kind of vision that the person has. So I mean, it's a metaphor that's kind of deployed even in our movies. I mean, I remember in the past when we were young, we had these uh, uh, this was a very common kind of scene in the movies from the past. Um, I'm a Maharashtrian, so in the past, you on Doordarshan, they would show this Marathi movies on Saturday, and then Sunday would be for Hindi movies. So Marathi movies would have a lot of melodrama, a lot of you know scenes where uh, there's a lot of crying and lamentation and all that. And inevitably, there would be scene where somebody who's related to the hero or the heroine would die. And the metaphor that would be used would be this butter lamp. It kind of dies out, and the person is kind of it. I've seen that in some Indian movies where the breeze takes away that little candle burning or a diya burning. Yes. Yeah, it's very widely deployed. It used to be in the past, at least. I haven't seen that in the movies in the recent times. Yeah. So maybe that metaphor has got something to do with this. Yeah. And that's the kind of vision you have at the fourth stage, the dissolution of the fire, air element, wind element. So at this stage, at the fourth stage, the gross consciousness is all dissolved, and the person has also kind of almost stopped breathing at this stage. In fact, the breathing has ceased. Uh, and externally, there's no sign of breathing. And the person would be deemed dead at this stage. But according to the Tibetan tradition, Vajrayana tradition, and that's actually just the fourth stage. And there are still four more stages that the person has to go through before he can be considered dead. So your gross consciousnesses have all dissolved at this stage, and then you proceed to the dying person proceeds to the fifth stage, which is called the stage of white appearance. So here there are only internal signs. There are no external signs. As I said, the person is not breathing anymore, so there's no external sign of life here. So the inner sign, that the inner vision that the dying person has, he sees this vast, clear sky filled with a whitish kind of light, typically the kind of light that you've seen emanating from an autumn moon. I'm not sure how, again, in India, we don't really have that season. And for people like us who stay in the cities, it's very difficult to visualize this. But at least in places where we stay, it's slightly more remote. You do have these kind of uh, uh, situations where you know, there's a full moon and there's a very subtle kind of white light that pervades the entire sky. Uh, uh, so it's quite beautiful, actually. This kind of like, so that's the kind of vision that this person, the dying person, would have. The appearance of white light. It's called the white appearance. So the wind element has dissolved into the space, or the consciousness element, and the person has this white appearance, the vision of white appearance, pervading the entire sky. There's no external sign at this stage. So why this is happening is because your subtle energies, they start kind of you settle energy from the upper part of your body. Uh, they come and converge at the crown of your head, and they start entering the central channel. The central channel that runs from the crown of your head to the base of your spine. Again, a very subtle kind of channel, can't be seen in any kind of X-ray or anything. Uh, so the energy start kind of uh, converging towards the crown and enter the central channel, and that's the reason why you have this appearance of this white appearance. So what is said is that your white drop, which you inherited from your father, that starts melting and enters the central channel. So that leads to this white appearance at the fifth stage. And then the sixth stage, which is the red appearance. So at the sixth stage, the person has the vision of redness, um, very similar to what you would see when the sun sets and the entire sky is pervaded with the red light that emanates from the setting sun. So the person who is dying has this kind of vision. He has this vision of a very vast kind of sky filled with uh, red light from red light similar to that which would emanate from a setting sun. And the reason that he has this appearance, this red appearance, is because the red drop that we inherited from our mother, that enters the central channel, and that happens from the red drop actually abides somewhere around our navel region, and that enters the central channel, and that's the reason you have this red appearance. So this is the sixth stage. What is that red drop? So we have the white drop and the red drop that we inherit from our parents. So the white drop comes from the father, and the red drop comes from the mother. And usually it abides around our navel region. So that energy then kind of starts dissolving, and it enters the simple channel. So that's the sixth stage, the red appearance. And then that is followed by the black appearance, the stage of near attainment of black appearance. So at this stage, the person has an inner vision of total darkness. So he has this vision. And you can imagine the sky on a moonless night. Uh, it's completely dark. So the person who is dying has that kind of vision, complete darkness. And the reason that he has this appearance is because the white drop and the red drop are now kind of reached these, close to the heart chakra. It's the heart chakra. We have something called the indestructible drop. So the white drop and the red drop are now kind of circling the indestructible drop. They kind of covered the indestructible drop. And that's the reason you have this black appearance. So that is the seventh stage, the black appearance. And then that is followed by the eighth stage, which is the experience of the clear light. So this indestructible drop, which embeds the subtlest winds and the subtlest mind, uh, that's part of our continuum, that breaks through, and that manifests, and the person has this vision of a clear sky, vast empty space, uh, filled with clear colorless light, similar to what you would see in the sky before the sun rises. So he has that kind of vision of uh, vast space being pervaded with clear colorless sky. And that's when the you have this experience of clear light, or the clear light mind, the subtlest mind that abides in your continuum, that breaks through, that manifests. Um, and then a person is trained well enough, who's acquainted himself with this process of dissolution of energies, he can identify that the clear light mind is the subtlest mind that's at your disposal, and you can use that clear light mind to then meditate on subtle phenomena like emptiness. And a person who is trained well enough would use that. That's what people who practice this clear light meditation, they do. So use that clear light mind to meditate on a subtle phenomena like emptiness, and you could abide in that phase, uh, depending on your training. And as I said, there are people who abide in that state for few days. There are people who've done that, who can abide, who use that for a period of 2 weeks, 3 weeks. You can stay in that state for a long time. That's the clear light experience. So the dying person would go sequentially through this process of dissolution of energies. And then once the clear light mind manifests, a person who is not trained well enough, it will just manifest very briefly. The person wouldn't be able to notice it also. And then the process of dissolution kind of reverses. So the experience of clear light then leads to the experience of black appearance. The black appearance then leads to red appearance, and then it goes all the way in reverse order till you have the uh, earth element kind of manifesting. So that process of dissolution is reversed, and what happens is then what is called the rebirth process is initiated. So at the time the clear light experience ceases, that's when the rebirth has been initiated. And again, the rebirth kind of doesn't happen directly. You're reborn in what is called an antarbhav, or an intermediate being, or a pardo being. It's in Tibetan you call it pardo. So an intermediate being or an antarbhav. And the intermediate being, it takes on the form that you are likely to be reborn in. So if you're going to be reborn as a human, then that being will take on the form of a male child or a female child, uh, or as an animal, whatever form you're going to take. And then it stays in that state uh, for a period of a week first. And if it happens to get a new form in that period of 1 week, then you reborn. The process of rebirth is completed. Uh, it may happen that the intermediate being does not get a new form in that period of 1 week. So at the end of that week, it has a small death, and then it's reborn again in a form that it would probably take in the future. Again, that process repeats for a week. If it gets a new form within that week, then fine. Otherwise, it has a small death up to the second week, and the thing kind of continues till 49 days or 7 weeks. By the end of the 7th week, the person, the intermediate being, would have got a new form. So that's the intermediate being. So for the dying person, these are the 8 different stages of dissolution that the person will proceed through. So we need to kind of acquaint ourselves with this process, and a lot of these.
Small question.
Yes.
This entire this elaborate process, are you? Is it describing the seconds before death, or maybe the days and weeks before death?
Yeah, it could be extended over hours also. For a person who has sudden death, maybe in an accident, it will be almost instantaneous. But a person who is dying in natural death, and this process of shutting down, it can extend over hours. It can extend over hours. You can actually see this signs. Uh, I've been around a couple of such dying people. Very recently, somebody in Bangalore itself passed away, and he'd asked me to be around. Uh, Before his death. At the time of death, of course, I didn't want to be there. His family members were there, and they described things like this, how his body was transforming. And then they said that at a certain stage in that process of shutting down, the body would turn yellow. But usually in our literature, if that is a sign that is displayed, it's supposed to be a auspicious sign that the person is going to take a rebirth in a fortunate manner. So you can see some of these things.
So the steps would be the same, but
Yes.
they could either happen in a flash or
Yes.
they could happen.
Yes, the steps would be the same.
Yeah, I have seen someone was going to pass away. I think 2-3 days before she died, her body became stiff.
Yes.
Like, you see the first signs of
Yes.
that she died.
So, yeah, even my grandmother, when she passed away, she went through this process, and I could see it. That happened over almost 2 days. So 2 days before her passing away, she'd almost turned into a log. So her eyes were closed. The sense consciousnesses were, kind of subdued. During the course of her death, I was chanting things and all those things, speaking to her, hoping that she would register something. After a day and a half, she was there just like a dog. But somewhere after a day and a half, she just replied to me, "I can't really see anything." That was the only thing that she said during that process. So, but it took about 2 days for the entire shutting down process to complete. So it could happen never.
So after the fourth stage, the person is for people around. The person is kind of medically dead.
Yes.
So there is an immediate cremation that happens when the person leaves the body. So what happens to the 4 stages after that?
So that's the reason in the
astral
yes.
body?
There's a subtle body. The consciousness is not left
So
with it.
so the body is
The
gone.
body. No, the body is still there. The body is still there. It's not completely. The person is not dead at that stage. So you still have to wait for the process to complete. And in the Tibetan tradition, a person who has died, actually, the body is kept for 3 days before it's either cremated or sky burial or whatever you do for 3 days. And there's a visible sign that the consciousness has left the body. And there's a discharge of fluid from the nostrils and from your organs. So usually in the Tibetan tradition, they keep something here and keep checking if there's any kind of discharge. And if they notice the discharge, then the person, cotton, yeah.
Well, my own mother who was talking to me had a cardiac arrest and she just collapsed. And she passed away. So within an hour or so, just like you were saying, we were waiting for family to come, so we had to put her into the freezer.
Yes.
In the morning. So then what we saw was that the 4th stage had happened. She collapsed and it was very sudden.
Okay.
Within like 2 minutes, it was done.
Yeah.
So can there be that the first 4 stages happen very quickly and the next 4 probably?
Yeah, the exact duration, I mean, there's no definite duration that you can actually speak of. And there could be several reasons why I mean, there are also these funny stories that we hear of. Of course, there are people who stay in this clear light meditation for an extended time. But then there's also this story that I heard that there was someone who died, and there was no visible external sign of the consciousness having left the body. But then the person was a monk, I think, and his disciple then uh, uh, decided to. The monk was attached to something physical in his room, and he was very worried what will happen to that thing, object after his passing away. And the student kind of tell him not to worry about it, and it will be kind of handed over to the right person and all that. And the moment that happened, there was this visible sign of.
Does it mean that at that time the decay starts or what?
Yeah, when the discharge happens, then at that time is dead, and then the body will start decaying. Till that time, of course, there's no decay. There's still some subtle warmth that's.
Is that the part that they say is called fulfilment?
Yeah, at that time, the totem is when the clear light mind manifests, and the meditator then uses that clear light mind, the subtle mind, to abide in a meditation and meditates on subtle phenomena like emptiness. So that is what is referred to as totem.
And after that, the decay starts.
When the clear light mind ceases, when that experience ceases, and the process of transition to an intermediate being, that the first stage, the black attainment stage, the black appearance stage happens. At that stage, the person is dead. So he's left this body. So
Can these stages overlap or can they happen?
No, this is sequential.
It is always
sequential. Yeah. The durations could be different.
Oh, duration.
Yeah.
And as my dad also died, I was not there. My sister said he turned around to her and said he was lying in bed. He said, I think I'm going. He said he told her that, and she got up and she started yelling for my mother to come. And she said it was barely a minute. I did that, and I came back into the room and he was gone. So I was like, that gives me these goosebumps. But he said. So she was saying, like, I don't know, if he had really gone, but there was no visible signs of him not being there.
It's a tricky situation for us in the cities. The moment the doctor declares that the person is dead, when the audience says that the body be cremated immediately. This question that does arise in my mind also sometimes. And what we've been instructed is that that's still, I mean, you can't guarantee that the person is dead at that stage. I mean, the safer thing would be to find a way to keep the body for a couple of days, maybe in a freezer or something.
There is great saint in Goa, Saint Francis, 400 years.
Yeah.
Does it mean that they're still like him? Could it be that they're still like him? They're not decaying and they're not like.
Well, I'm not sure how we can explain that. Yeah, not really sure how I can explain that.
It's for people who have not undergone through this training their mind on that meditation, the ordinary living. Sometimes they go into real-life state. Yes. Or, for example, it happened with my neighbor who was passed away around very recently, 90 years old. He was religious, but there was nobody knew that he was into philosophical study of all this literature, right? Buddhist literature. But very religious, always reciting prayers. He passed away.
Okay.
And his body didn't show sign of decay for around more than 2 weeks. It was kind of it became kind of a news. A lot of people came to check whether it really happened or not. Even my uncle went there to check.
Okay.
Because my uncle is Christian.
Oh yeah.
So he went there to check. And he said he showed all signs of the clear light state that normally the monks would show.
Okay.
But Yeah, he was not known to have undergone training.
No, when we say that the person has some training, and it may not be in the immediate past itself. It could be an imprint from the past also that the person is able to invoke, and some experience from the past, some training that the person has received from the past. So any such imprint from the past that the person is able to invoke.
It would be accidental or
I doubt it's accidental. I doubt it's accidental.
It was described that at times it could be tricky, wherein modern doctors would say that the person is dead,
Yes.
but actually the consciousness may not have left the body.
Yeah.
And let's say everyone around is materially conditioned and they go for the cremation or the body. What could be the repercussion?
Yeah, it's very tricky. It's very tricky. And now that we have this knowledge that, yeah, it's very difficult. That's what I was saying. When I think about it, I mean, we'll have to kind of find a way to keep the body for some time at
What
least.
would be the repercussion? It has, presuming that death is complete, the body has been consigned.
Uh-huh.
But actually, at the time the body is being consigned, there is still the element of consciousness.
Yes, yes,
It's not the death is not being complete.
yes.
What would be the repercussion for that being, for that jiva
Uh-huh.
at that point of time, if something like that?
so is the body is not sustainable anymore with training. So consciousness will automatically be cancelled.
Yeah, that will happen. Yeah.
And it to the next level.
Yeah. So
Also, the body is
So what you're doing is actually depriving that person of the opportunity to use the subtle states. If there was any training that the person has or some imprint from the past, but of course that it's going to die. That death is imminent. Yeah, it's already initiated. Uh, so you're just kind of depriving of him of that opportunity to use that clear light mind at the end of the state process.
Would it result in some sankharas being created? Would that be traumatic for that jiva at that point of time?
Oh.
It would have a negative or traumatic imprint because
Well, again, so whatever is happening to that person is also a function of the karma that he has created. So it's not entirely the environment's fault, right? Of course, the environment also has a responsibility to ensure that he's not deprived of that opportunity. It's a tricky thing, though. It's a very tricky thing.
So, in the Hindu tradition, after the condition starts, the whole process of chanting and pujas and all, of the movement into the realms, is that also aiding this process of the inner vision? So, because there is an understanding that the being exists in another realm, and so the 13 days of whatever is happening is in reference to that being in the other realm.
So while the person is dying or after his death?
After the cremation is done, even during the cremation, before the cremation, when the body is there, the rituals begin, right?
Yes.
So the whole process begins. So is that the Hindu kind of way of, like even in Christianity, I've seen that. I've seen it in both. So you keep the body, and then there are prayers and rituals and all of that happening.
Yeah.
For a period of some time, where the body gets an opportunity to go through the last 4 stages.
Yes.
Maybe, and also the transition. There are some days of like for 12, 13 days, there are some rituals happening. So is that also something?
It's very similar to what we do in the Tibetan tradition also.
Okay.
So even while the process of dying is in action, the person who is assisting the dying person, there are a lot of chanting that happens during that process. When the person is dead, again there's a lot of chanting. There's a lot of prayers that are done on behalf of the person. In fact, that's something that we're supposed to cover. Maybe we'll just brush up on it. So, as I said, in the Tibetan tradition, you keep the body for a period of 3 days at least to ensure that the consciousness is left. So even while the person is going through this sequential stage of dissolution of energies, the other people need to ensure that the dying person somehow is able to manifest a positive state of mind, because ultimately the final moment of dying becomes very critical. What mind manifests at the final stage. You've seen the 12 links of dependent origination, right? So the 12 links are kind of classified into the projecting factors, the actualizing factors, and then the projective factors and the actualized factors. So there's this 10th element called the element of becoming. So that link, when it manifests, it has the karmic seed, which is kind of completely activated, and about to impel a new birth. So, and that mind is nurtured by the previous two elements, the element of craving and grasping. So, if through your training, if you are able to kind of control that final moment and ensure that it is not nurtured by these afflicted states of craving and grasping, you can ensure that some positive state of mind manifests at that last moment. And for that, you need a lot of familiarization and training. The best mind that one can manifest at the time of dying is this most expansive mind that we are aware of, the mind of enlightenment of bodhicitta. So that's the reason we did all these meditations. It's all about cultivating the attitude of bodhicitta. Uh, so, as a person who is assisting the dying person, whether the person is a Buddhist or is a non-Buddhist or is completely agnostic towards religion, you find a way to counsel him in a way that he is able to generate some aspect of this positive mind. The more expansive, the better. The more altruistic, the better. But some aspect of this bodhicitta mind, if he's able to manifest at the time of death, and that really would set him on the right path. His rebirth would be in a fortunate realm, and then its effect will also manifest in the future lifetimes. So the part that we're supposed to cover on how to assist a person who's dying essentially is about helping him manifest this positive state of mind. So if he's a Buddhist and he's of course studied a bit of Buddhism, he's studied concepts like impermanence and all that. So you remind him about those concepts. You kind of maybe read out a sutra which talks about impermanence. If he's not a Buddhist, then if he still follows one of the Indian traditions, he's still kind of amenable to the concept of rebirth and all that. Even then, you can kind of introduce these concepts to him and guide him, steer him towards this positive state of mind. You may not call it bodhicitta, but there's nothing religious about the mind of enlightenment. You can use terminology and phrases to describe it using non-Buddhist terms. Yeah. Similarly, for a person who's not religious, who's completely agnostic, you use a similar kind of phraseology or terminology and steer him towards this positive state of mind. And again, all through this process, you need to be very careful that you do not impose your own faith and belief onto this person who is dying. Try and do it in a manner that is not controversial. If the other person finds it kind of he objects to the use of religious terms and all that, make sure that you can use regular kind of terms. The person I just spoke of, I had to kind of counsel him during this process of dying. He was not a Buddhist; he was a Hindu, and he had his own spiritual affiliations and all that. I talked about similar things. And of course, there's nothing objectionable about the concept of mind of enlightenment. So essentially, he spoke about the same thing, and I kind of guided him through different meditations, and he was very open to it. But at the time of death, the person who is dying, and it's nice to create an environment where he has access to there's some imagery that he's familiar with, some religious spiritual imagery that he's familiar with, or maybe a photo of his spiritual guru, those kind of things you surround him with. So this person had a spiritual guru, from a different tradition. And I actually asked him to kind of invoke his interactions with that spiritual guru. And he did that. And he had a fairly comfortable, peaceful kind of transition. So we kind of make a note of all these things. And then after the person is dead, the prayers and pujas that you're talking about, we have this concept in the Indian tradition. It's called tervi, right? Tervi is doing extensive prayers on the 13th day. And I was talking about this transition every 7th day, right? So the 7th day, the intermediate being is transitioning into a new form. So you do this puja on the 6th day, before the transition. And then 7 days after that. So that's the reason the 13th day becomes important. So what you do is you do these pujas, and you essentially what you're doing is you're sharing, dedicating whatever merit you accumulated, either through practices that you've done yourself or you've done on behalf of the other person. And it's better that you use the other person's resources. If there's anything that is left behind, use his resources to sponsor pujas or whatever, because then the merit that is being accumulated is he's responsible for that. But anyways, whatever pujas you do, prayers you do, you dedicate that merit to that person, so that he then has good rebirth and future rebirths. And even in the future rebirths, he has favorable conditions to advance his spiritual training. So those are the kind of things that you need to kind of be aware of when you're assisting somebody who is dying. So therapy is something that is very common in the tradition. And again, as it's very similar to what's done in the Tibetan tradition, except that in the Tibetan tradition, you do it for a period of 49 days. So it would be the 13th day actually. The second week would be the 13th day. So you do that before the person transitions. So you share the merit before the person is transitioning into a new form. So that sharing of merit would lead to him having a good rebirth. So 13 followed by the 20th day, 27. So you go that way. So we're all kind of doing it without really knowing the background. Yeah.
So it's one practice which when we do is the smoke offering.
Yes.
Every day. That full offering that is given.
Yes.
It's supposed to be the kind of food for the cargo being.
Yes. Yes.
That's one unique practice.
Yes. Yes.
One question I have is regarding sharing of merit. For example, making offering during the 7th day. That's usually for offering.
Yes.
And then give up, and then recitation of the prayers. Because in the karma, we have 4 characteristics of karma, which says that you are not going to experience any karma that you have not created.
Yes.
So that way, once the person has passed away already, is that person really benefiting from the merits created by his family members or anyone else?
Yeah, that's a good question. Yeah. So it definitely benefits the person who's practicing it. Yeah. So I would believe that there's some energy that is set into motion that would assist the other person also. Karma, of course, there are 2 aspects. There's the seed, which is a substantial cause for him to experience the effects of his karmic action. But there's also the environment, which provides the conditions for that seed to nurture into, to fructify into sapling. Yeah. So through these prayers, you set about positive energy into motion, and those could alter some of the conditions in the environment and aid the seed. So in that respect, maybe it can really.
What is why specifically I have heard as far as the says, the focus should be always more on when you are alive, rather than what others do for you when you pass away.
Yes.
Yeah, that's a common sense.
Yes, that's what we've done. And all these meditations and discussion that we had is essentially to train yourself, prepare yourself for the final stage of dying. And that's our responsibility. That's incumbent on us to utilize time and resources to familiarize ourselves with these practices. But for majority of us outside don't really invest any resources in doing this. So we still need to, try our best to make that process of transition, comfortable for them, meaningful for them. And we can do that by, making this prayers. Just the fact that he knows that there's a person who is praying for me, can set up a positive state of mind in his mind state. So it's not completely irrelevant. Definitely helps. It definitely helps.
The Tibetan tradition is quite grand. That post-death ritual are quite grand. For 49 days, 7 days.
Yeah.
More than usually that is observed more than the birth.
Yeah.
We don't have celebration.
Yeah.
Birthday celebration much.
Yeah.
But after that, quite grand.
Yeah. But as I said, when you're offering these pujas or prayers, there is something that the person has left behind. Use those resources to, sponsor those prayers and pujas. So in that case, the merit is actually, going to that person itself. So it can help in that sense.
I've also heard that the post-death ritual also helps people, the family, to make this the event. Someone passed away.
Yeah.
So without doing any post-death ritual like in very secular modern society, for them without any death rituals, they have it more difficult. They go through more difficult time dealing with the death of their loved ones.
Yes.
And when you do that rituals, you have the sense of having done something for the one who passed away.
Correct. Yeah.
And that actually helps deal with the trauma.
Sure. Yeah. Yeah. That's a way for the people who are left behind, the people related to the deceased person, and they can make peace with the process of transition. Yeah, that's true.
It's also, he said, a lot of people, food is offered, a lot of people come. So, I think it's a mechanism to cope up with the loss of somebody that you love.
Yes.
So when you have community around, it just makes it a little bit easier to, get out of the sadness that arises.
When you're engaging in all these virtuous activities, usually it's the family members who do all these things, right? So let's say the father of a family is passed on. All these activities are kind of supported through his resources.
Yeah.
So although he's not there in person to supervise these activities, it's still his resources that are responsible for. So he's creating merit. All these activities are leading to some merit creation for that person.
I have a question. So in the first 4 stages, there is so much of anxiety and fear and trauma, and people don't want to let go. The person who's dying doesn't want to go, and so there's a lot of resistance. There's a lot of attachment, and so this is a practice that one needs to do well before, if we are practitioners, so to speak. So is that the meditation that we imagine ourselves dead, or is that what is the practice?
In the
familiarize myself to not go into that spaces of fear and anxiety and trauma, and I don't want to go and I want to be here, and there's chaos at that time for the person who's dying and for the people who are attached to the person.
Okay. Yeah, all that training has to come before the final stage. And as people who are engaged with study of spirituality, a lot of our training is actually geared towards preparing ourselves.
It's like almost a daily meditational practice. Yes. And becomes easy at that point when you know that you're going. Okay. So you're able to kind of say, oh, okay, I'm at this stage, I'm at this stage, I'm at this stage, and then
Yeah, this familiarization, of course, happens through your daily meditation practices. There's nothing negative about it. In fact, there's a very positive aspect to this. People actually simulate this process of dying in the Tibetan meditation traditions. And if you've been initiated into some tantra, this process of dying is actually part of the path. So the process of dying is the basis for purification, and the result of this purification process is actually what is called the truth. truth body that you manifest. So you take the process of dying into your path and use that at the end of when the clear light mind manifests. That clear light mind is then visualized in the aspect of in this nature of what is called the dharmakaya. And the intermediate being process is used to practice the manifestation of the Sambhogakaya. And the rebirth process is used to meditate on the manifestation of the Nirmanakaya. So that is all part of what is called the meditation on the generation stage. And then there's meditation on the completion stage. So these meditations are kind of part of practice. Yeah. So we do that almost on a daily basis. So if you've been initiated in any tantra, there's something that you do. So that's how you become familiar with the process. So you simulate it actually. Simulate it.
And is there any kind of for the people who are assisting or what the mindset that they have to cultivate around people who are dying? Because death is something that is seen as such a negative. There's so much of fear attached to it. There's like the whole culture, religion, tradition talks about heaven and hell and all of that. And there's so much of attachment to it. How do you disseminate it?
Yeah, that's the reason. The first part of our discussion where we.
So all of that.
Yeah. So the whole thing that death is inevitable.
Yeah.
The
So the whole practice on
Yes.
impermanence,
Yes.
the practice on
Yes. Impermanence is the most powerful tool for you to learn. Yeah. So you reflect and meditate on impermanence.
And that's how you develop that mindset.
Correct, absolutely. So impermanence, meditation on impermanence is absolute. So there's a reason the Buddha said, amongst all ideas, the idea of death and impermanence is the root for your spiritual advancement. Okay, so you've
Just
run
one
out of
some
time.
of the things that you said, right? Your body starts sinking and with and then there is darkness. So some of it happens when you sleep as well. Okay,
Yeah, that's a similar
go through
process also.
same.
Yeah.
Some of these, maybe not all.
Yeah.
It's a daily practice.
Yeah.
It's a daily
So there's something called sleep yoga that we practice also. So the dissolution of energies could be similar. Okay, so there is a meditation that I was planning to do, but meditation on medicine Buddha, but we don't have time today, so maybe we'll do it some other time. So Lama Zopa Rinpoche has advised that for a person who's dying, this practice of medicine Buddha is quite useful. And you visualize medicine Buddha and you do a certain chanting of prayers and mantras associated with that practice. So we'll do that maybe some other time. So we'll stop here. Before we stop for the day, we'll just do a short dedication. So just close your eyes and just reflect over all the discussion that we've had. And just think about all the merit that we've created. And let's dedicate that merit. So due to the merits of these virtuous actions, may I quickly attain the state of a Guru Buddha and lead all sentient beings without exception into that enlightened state. May the supreme jewel bodhicitta that has not arise and grow, and that may that which is arise and not diminish but increase more and more. Okay, so with that dedication, we'll stop. This is just a short prayer that we'll do for some people who were affiliated with our center directly, indirectly, but who passed on. So Amita gave me a name. As daughter's father-in-law, he passed away recently from cancer. There's another friend of mine, Ritesh Amanvatkar, who passed away recently again from cancer.
Also, Udayan Gupta.
Udayan Gupta. So we'll do some dedication on their behalf. So in the holy presence of the three jewels, the ever kind refuge of the three times, from Walter Tomlinson, Ritesh Manvatkar, and Udayan Gupta, who prostrate with utmost humility and sincerest respect with body, speech, and mind, and sincerely pray for the prosperity of the Dharma and for the well-being of all sentient beings. So Walter Tomlinson, Ritesh Manvatkar, and Udayan Gupta fervently solicit prayers and spiritual assistance from the compassionate and loving Sangha. May the pure Dharma abide till samsara ends, and may all the pure upholders of the Dharma in principle, His Holiness the Dalai Lama, and all the other noble gurus have long lives, and may all their compassionate prayers be spontaneously realized. May the Bodhisattva aspirations of the supremely compassionate yogi, Kabji Lama Zopa Rinpoche, presently displaying the form of one departed to the pure realms, be thoroughly realized, and may his unmistaken reincarnation return swiftly to guide us, and may the reincarnation continue and fulfill his various activities from the previous life. And may Walter Tomlinson, Udayan Gupta, and Ritesh Manvatkar swiftly obtain the exalted state of the four bodies of complete enlightenment through a swift accumulation of wisdom and merit, and a swift purification of all their transgressions and negative karma. May all those related to Walter, Udayan, and Ritesh who are alive benefit from a quick pacification of all their immediate obstacles in the form of poor health, economic difficulties, etc. And may they realize success in all their present and future activities. Okay, now Uday, thank you for your time and enjoy the rest of your day. Thank you very
Thank
much.
you very much, Yalla, for coming over this weekend and teaching us. Can I make an announcement?
Sure, sure. You want
Thank you all for coming and being here over the last 2 days and attending Gidla's teaching on such a beautiful topic. Thank you so much for teaching us. We at Choe have something going on next week, a very interesting. You must have received the mail if you are on the mailing list. Geshe Tenzing Namdak, one of our teachers, is coming to Bangalore, and he will be holding teachings and discourses on the reality and the nature of the mind. This will be held at the center over 2 days. And so please sign up if you want to come online, or please, if you want to access this online, or please come here to the center for this retreat style teaching on this very important topic. It is on 23rd from 10:30 in the morning all the way to 3:15, 3:15 in the afternoon. So this is for the 23rd, and 24th from 10:30 to 1. So there are 3 sessions planned for that day. And please tell your friends as well, and you come to the center. Thank you very much.
Yeah, please everybody make it a point to attend that session. It's with Geshe Nanda. He's the original teacher from this center. He's the first teacher. Yeah. Of course, we had sessions. And the first inaugural session that we had here was by Khensun Rinpoche Losang Sering. He's a very highly realized practitioner from Serege Monastery. Geshe Namdak was translating for him. So that's the first time I met Geshe Namdak. And ever since that time, we've had a very strong connection. He used to stay with me when he'd come visit Bangalore. So he's completed the entire studies program, and now he's the resident teacher, resident Geshe at the center in England. So try and make it for the teaching. It will be very useful. Yeah.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. And this prayer request, last time also I announced. So if there's any dedication that you want to make on behalf of somebody that you're connected with, then you can just write your name, the names, and leave it at the center. And next time, whoever comes in, we can read out the dedication request. Okay. Thank you for all those people online. Have a good day. Yeah. Bye, Archana.
Sorry, I had a bad cold and all. I couldn't make it there. Oh.
So
you.
Kailangan.